For this project, Leah and I have decided to discuss the book-to-movie adaptation that is Percy Jackson and the Sea of Monsters. In this presentation, we will discuss the main source material and how the book diverges from the original source. The movie Percy Jackson and the Sea of Monsters was released in 2013 and directed by the German film director Thor Freudenthal. He is also known for children and preteen movies like Hotel for Dogs and Diary of a Wimpy Kid. The movie follows our main character, Percy Jackson, and his two friends as they discover that Talia's tree has been poisoned. Talia's tree is what keeps the magical border around Camp Half-Blood safe, and suddenly that border is threatened. The only way that they can save this tree and successfully protect Camp Half-Blood is by retrieving the Golden Fleece, and to get it, they must reach the Sea of Monsters. On their quest to retrieve the fleece, Percy and his friends face many obstacles, the biggest of which is the fact that another character named Luke is also looking for the fleece. The book series of Percy Jackson is as famous as books like Harry Potter and The Hunger Games, however the movies did not receive the same reputation as others.
This movie is primarily based on The Sea of Monsters by Rick Riordan. Riordan would tell his son bedtime stories of the Greek myths, and when he ran out, his son proposed he make his own stories. This inspired Riordan to write the first book, The Lightning Thief, and he wanted to encourage kids to read more. He read Greek mythology growing up and refers to a lot of ancient Greek stories in the books. One of them is the Odyssey. The heroes go to Circe's island and encounter Polyphemus in chapters 12, 14, 15, and 16. The quest for the fleece throughout the book is influenced by Jason and the Argonauts. So is the run-in with the Colchis bulls in chapter 4. The movie is named after the second book, but actually takes plot lines from the second to fifth books, especially the second, The Sea of Monsters, and the fifth, The Last Olympian. In chapter 12 of The Sea of Monsters, Percy and Annabeth end up at Cece's Spawn Resort, which is actually Circe's island and a prison for male demigods. Cece turns Percy into a guinea pig under the pretense that he will be getting a full makeover and be a better version of himself. She turns men into their true self, which she claims is pigs, but pigs smell too bad, so she goes for guinea pigs instead. When Annabeth finds out what Circe did, she takes one of Hermes' multivitamins so that magic won't work on her. She puts a knife to Circe's neck and threatens her. After Circe refuses to turn the guinea pigs back into humans, Annabeth gives them multivitamins and they transform. This is similar to what happens in Book 10 of the Odyssey. Odysseus' men are cursed by Circe and turned into pigs. Odysseus takes Hermes' magic herbs so that Circe's spells won't work on him. In the movie, this scene doesn't happen at all. They do go to a place called Circeland, but it's an old amusement park and is where Polyphemus has been staying. Also, the island looks pretty barren for a place that has the Golden Fleece. In chapter 13, as Percy and Annabeth are approaching the Sirens' Island aboard the Queen Anne's Revenge, Annabeth tells Percy that she wants to hear the Sirens' song. When hearing the song, one hears their greatest desires and are more wise after it. Percy helps tie Annabeth to the foremast so that she doesn't try to drown herself when hearing the song. Percy had forgotten to take away Annabeth's knife and she cut herself free. So Percy dives into the water to get Annabeth and manages to catch up to her. He pulls her down underwater to break the siren's spell and returns to the ship. There she tells him that the sirens showed her that her fatal flaw is hubris. In the Odyssey, Odysseus also asks his men to tie him to the mast so that he can hear the siren's song and see the future. The sirens and Annabeth's fatal flaw are not shown in the movie. The only reference to the sirens is the name of the coffee shop that Percy, Annabeth, Tyson, and Grover go to in DC. In chapter 14, Annabeth comes up with the idea for Percy to get inside Polyphemus' cave by hanging from the belly of a sheep, while she gets in using her invisibility cap. Once Percy is in, Annabeth insults Polyphemus and tells him that she is nobody. Odysseus, in Book 9 of the Odyssey, tricks the Cyclops Polyphemus by telling him that his name is Autus, meaning no man. So when Odysseus is hurting Polyphemus, he cries out, "No man is killing me." In the Sea of Monsters book, Polyphemus still has bad eyesight from when Odysseus stabbed him in the eye. So when Annabeth says that she is nobody, he remembers Odysseus and gets angry, leaving the entrance to the cave open. This gives Percy enough time to find Grover and Clarice and escape. Polyphemus drops Annabeth, fatally wounding her, and Percy and Clarice attack him. In the end, Tyson returns and throws a rock at Polyphemus, causing him to fall off a cliff. The Golden Fleece is being protected by man-eating sheep, so Tyson is the one that can go get it. They save Annabeth with the fleece and leave the island. In the movie, trickery doesn't need to be used to get inside the cave, because the boulder that shuts it is already propped up. Grover distracts Polyphemus while Clarice tries to get the fleece, but he senses that there are half-bloods. Percy, Annabeth, Tyson, Clarice, and Grover run around passing the fleece to each other, trying to evade Polyphemus. Also, the movie made the fleece something that can just be thrown around when it's supposed to be 60 pounds of gold wool. So since this isn't the big battle of the movie, as it is in the book, it doesn't last very long, so that more attention can be given to Luke and Kronos. These three scenes all speak to Annabeth's character. She exhibits both great strength and weakness, bravery, quick wit, and planning skills, which makes sense because she's the daughter of Athena, the goddess of wisdom and strategy. In the scenes that they do keep in the movie, Annabeth isn't as smart and wise as she is in the books. She mainly serves as the love interest. They reduced her role and just have her there to be the pretty girl that kind of likes Percy. In the books, she's the one that usually comes up with plans and is very strategic. The movie doesn't include her magical Yankees cap or her celestial bronze knife, which contribute to so many important scenes. Maybe they decided to dumb down Annabeth because they thought that too many complex characters in the movie would confuse the audience, or would make the movie need to be longer because they would need to explain the stories of more characters. She's just not as bright in the movie and doesn't really do anything. Also, she keeps falling and needing to be picked up by Percy, and her plotline is basically reduced to being Percy's romantic interest. Kronos in Greek mythology was the king of the Titans and the father of the 6 eldest Olympian gods. He became ruler of the universe after castrating and murdering his father Uranos. Afraid that one of his children would overthrow him one day, Kronos swallowed them all. His sister wife Rhea hid the youngest, Zeus, until he was old enough to fight back. Zeus gave Kronos a drink that made him throw up his children, and a 10-year war ensued, which ended in Zeus cutting up his father and casting him into Tartarus. The movie uses plots not only from the second book, The Sea of Monsters, but also from the later books. In the Sea of Monsters book, the fleece is never placed on Kronos' sarcophagus, because he realized that bringing Talia back to life with the Golden Fleece will give him another child of the big three that he can manipulate into fulfilling the great prophecy that destroys Olympus. His reasoning is actually only revealed in the third book, The Titan's Curse. The writers probably knew that they wouldn't get to do another movie, so they brought in plot points from the other books to try to wrap up the story. The movie couldn't just end with Kronos still in the shadows. The fourth book is when Kronos returns, by using Luke's body as a host. In the movie, they didn't make Kronos need a host, so that he could take this big fire rock monster form, which looks scarier than him just possessing Luke. In the movie, Percy has no problem with putting his sword through Kronos, and actually defeats him pretty quickly. But in the books, it's more complicated because they don't want to kill Luke. Percy fights with Kronos a couple times, but never wins because Kronos is stronger, even after Percy bears the curse of Achilles. Luke tries to fight Kronos internally and regain control over his body. He eventually manages to with the help of Annabeth, and sacrifices himself to defeat Kronos by stabbing himself with a cursed blade. So without the need for a host, the writers can make Kronos look more monster-like, they can make Luke a less complicated character, and they can make Percy the big hero.
In Greek mythology, Hermes is known as the god who travels between the world of the gods, which we know to be Mount Olympus, and the world of the mortals, which is Earth. He is known as the messenger of the gods. Like most things in this movie, the introduction of the character Hermes varies in the movie from the book. In the book, he is introduced by arriving on the beach at Camp Half-Blood by himself and giving Percy a few gifts that he may need for his journey. This is more reflective of how Hermes was presented in ancient Greek myths. The mortals seldom traveled to Hermes, and instead he arrived where he needed to be. In the movie, that was changed, and instead Percy and his friends traveled to a UPS, which was actually an Olympus Postal Service building, in search of Hermes. This was likely done because it gave a slightly more realistic and modern feel to the audience. The crew of the movie has spoken out about how they hope to make the audience feel as though there could truly be half-bloods roaming around us in the 21st century.
The gifts that the god Hermes supplies Percy with also differ from the books. In the book, Percy receives a thermos of wind and multivitamins. The multivitamins are meant to make them immune to Circe's powers. However, in the movie, Percy Jackson receives the thermos and magical tape. The tape has the power to make things disappear. The casting of Hermes was one of the few good decisions on the part of the creators. Nathan Fillion is a well-established actor, and he helped to capture the attention of older audience members who were likely parents of younger children who were fans of the movie and the franchise. Overall, Leah and I felt like the movies were poorly adapted from the books. The job of adapting a book series to a movie is never easy, but this movie lacked in places that could have easily been fixed. One of the biggest reasons for this is because fan favorite scenes were neglected in the adaptation. One fan favorite scene has to do with Cersei's spa. Cersei's spa was how Rick Riordan modernized Cersei's story, specifically her island. She would use the spa to lure in men and turn them into pigs. This resembles how she used her island to lure in men in Greek mythology, specifically stories like Odysseus. Eventually in the books, we see that Percy and Annabeth are able to burn down the spa and thus stop Cersei from hurting others. Another great aspect of the book that was missing were the party ponies. The party ponies are a large group of centaurs that enjoy having fun times together. Kronos feels as though they are a nuisance and they keep getting in the way of his goals. Not only do the party ponies add comedy, but they show a side of Kronos' character that seemed to be missed in the movies, as well as show how centaurs worked in Greek mythology, in a sense. Furthermore, there seemed to be a lack of attention to detail. In the books, fans loved the world building, but the movies left this out. For example, in the books, nectar is known to be a drink that can harm half-bloods, but in the movies, Grover orders coffee with a shot of nectar. If the writers had made nectar something threatening or referenced the possible harms, it could have been an interesting way for people who do not read the books to see how the world of Percy Jackson actually exists. Considering how big the fandom of the Percy Jackson books are, an extremely disappointing factor of the movies was the choice to put scenes from 4 books into one single movie. The characters in the movies felt very two-dimensional and flat, and it was hard to identify with these characters. Fans of the books rave about being able to relate to these characters and feel like they are truly on the journey with this trio. Unfortunately, they didn't receive this in the movies, and overall the movies got such a bad review that they didn't continue with the franchise.